Hi, folks. Dr. P here, and I'm going to talk about fundamental ways of designing war games. Keep in mind, I have a PhD in military history, but I played war games long before I got that PhD. And I prefer war games to be good games first and good history second. But a lot of people have a different point of view. I think that war games in general are not about warfare, they're about generalship. That's partly because there's far too much information available in most commercial war games. Um, but war and games are opposites. War is terribly chaotic. Games are controlled, or at least for many people, they want the game to be something they can control or try to control. So it's much more practical to make a war game that's about generalship than about the horrible awfulness of actual warfare. Now, if you make a game that's history first rather than game first, it promotes the idea that history is inevitable. And it definitely is not inevitable. What happens in history is sometimes the most likely thing to have happened, but often is not. And of course, in almost any historical occurrence, there are lots and lots of different possibilities. And it's just a matter of chance as to which one comes out. Take a simple thing like the Battle of Waterloo. It rained the night before. Napoleon couldn't start his attack until something like 11 a.m. If he'd been able to start at 7 a.m., in other words, if it hadn't rained, he would have won that battle because he would have defeated the British before the Prussians arrived in large numbers. Pure chance. And you can go through many, many battles, especially, and find that pure chance had a lot to do with who won the battle. And yet, many historical games, if they don't make it inevitable, make the outcome inevitable, at least to make the player follow history, what actually happened, in order to be successful in the game. In other words, it's not a game, it's a puzzle. Now, I don't like puzzles, and puzzles have always correct solutions. And I prefer games which don't have always correct solutions. If they do, they're a game. And of course, the worst thing you can have in a game, just about, is a dominant strategy. A strategy everybody has to follow in order to be successful. But that's what a puzzle is something with a dominant strategy. You have to follow that strategy in order to be successful. Now, this especially becomes notable in solo war games, which are becoming more and more popular for reasons of the pandemic and just maybe not that many people who want to play war games. In other words, history is sort of the opponent. And once again, this tends to promote puzzles. All solo games, practically speaking, are puzzles. If they're complex enough or are clever enough, then it won't feel like a puzzle. But it is a puzzle at bottom. It may not be easily solved, but it's a puzzle. So in a solo game especially, the tendency is to make a puzzle that makes history inevitable in some way, rather than to make a game where you have lots of potential outcomes and lots of different ways of doing things. I've seen recently people commenting that in Ukraine, what the Ukrainians should be doing is presenting dilemmas to their opponent, put the opponent on the horns of a dilemma, and that is certainly fundamental of games. But those people also talk about problems as something where there's a solution. And so it's something to be avoided according to them. Well, to me, a problem has multiple solutions very commonly, unless it's a puzzle. Sometimes a puzzle only has one solution. Sometimes even a puzzle has more than one solution. But certainly a problem is something that can be solved in a lot of ways, and some of those ways are better than others in certain circumstances, but there's generally not a perfect way to solve that problem. So I would not use that dichotomy of dilemma versus problem. To me, it's more dilemma or problem versus puzzle. I think that games are more fun than puzzles. But if you're playing to learn history, or I should say, to learn the history that actually occurred, then it makes sense to make it a puzzle. But if you're playing to see lots of different possibilities and how things would have worked out, you're better off with a game than with a puzzle. Thanks for listening.